Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Joining Me Today podcast with me, Bailey Lewis Smith, a guy who's just felt his Monster Energy drink just come up a little bit and stuff while I was trying to say that and stuff. And I got the mango flavor if anyone's interested and stuff. It's pretty cool, but I can feel it a little and stuff. It's singing in my voice a little bit and stuff. But anyway and stuff, I'm prepared for another fantastic episode. Another brilliant guest on the show. What do you expect? I always bring you guys the best guests. I might be a bit mediocre, but I always make sure I get the best guests on the show for you guys. But before we get started and stuff, song recommendation time. I do it with every episode. I recommend a song out to my listeners. And in today's episode, I'm going to be recommending another indie song. Surprise, surprise. And so today, my song recommendation is going to be a song called I Got a Feeling by Stone. It's a fantastic kind of alt rock, a bit kind of that with the lyrics a bit kind of that spoken word type. If anybody sort of knows a band called Yard Act and stuff like that, and other sort of artists, Self-Esteem and stuff, other artists that do that sort of spoken word that kind of it's kind of speaking the lyrics, but obviously a bit musically and stuff like that. It's very much that kind of style, but sort of in that more rock sort of like style, that modern indie rock kind of alternative rock stuff. And it's just an absolutely fantastic song, fantastic Liverpool band and stuff like that. They're doing some great things, and you should definitely go check it out. But anyway, into the main portion of the episode. Today on the show, I have got former musician, I have got podcaster, and I've got all around fantastic guy. Welcome to the show, Michael Martin, aka Rickshaw. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
You got my
How are
fantastic.
you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good and stuff. I might do mediocre intros, as you can see. I'm not as good as yourself, but I'll try my best.
Oh, you're doing a great job, buddy.
uh, so to sort of you've seen myself and stuff doing my song recommendation, and the first question I like to ask is what song recommendation would you recommend out to the listeners?
Oh, I mean, it's funny because I was just thinking about how somebody was suggesting metalcore songs the other day, and it was like all these singy, lots of singy stuff, like lots of Bring Me the Horizon, lots of like Bad Omens and stuff. And you dropped this on me, and my favorite song that I've been listening to this week because I'm revisiting it is Neon Grave by Dayseeker. So I would recommend that, even though I've been like lately, I've been like, more heavy stuff needs to be recommended. And here I am suggesting a hint of the poppy stuff. So
It's like when people saying stuff like that. I need to listen to more indie stuff, and then they just go back to listening to Imagine Dragons or something, in it.
yeah, I've always thought, what's the next step? Here I am imagining dragons. What do I do now?
uh, it's quite funny as well, because I feel like Bring Me the Horizon is now becoming not sort of poppy, but they're a lot more mainstream, especially than they
Yeah.
were like 5 years ago. I remember when I first heard about them, I was like, oh, cool. And then they suddenly got this like, not boy band like, but this like massive wave of people liking them like a mainstream band. It's quite crazy.
Mhm. I used to love Bring Me the Horizon on their first album.
Mm.
And I remember like how heavy it was. I honestly forgot. I was thinking about it recently because someone was playing a song and I was like, that's so heavy. What is that? And I was like, I know this song. I used to listen to this. And I remembered it was Bring Me the Horizon. And I was like, oh my God, they have changed so much. Like to the point of me not like I won't even check new stuff out. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, well, we all know what they sound like now. So
Yeah, that could be also another little recommendation. If you guys haven't checked out, check out some Bring Me the Horizons. I've obviously check out and stuff like that, sort of your song recommendation and stuff. You're a music man, so I know your recommendations are going to be fantastic and stuff like that. But speaking of music and stuff, obviously you've touched on it a little bit, talking about sort of metalcore music, whatever. You was sort of most famously part of a band called I Wrestled a Bear Once and stuff, a very big band and stuff in the late 2000s, sort of early 2010s in terms of metal. I don't like 2010s music, as you can tell by my British indie pop shirt, but 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 like, sort of, what was it sort of, what I mean? Like, how did you even get involved in some of the band, sort of like in the first place? Because you wasn't there at the beginning. You sort of joined later on, didn't you?
It wasn't too much later on, because it was, I mean, lots of people, whenever you think of the span of a band's lifetime, it's always like very like skewed, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Because lots of people would say that. They would say that I came along a lot later, but the band started in 2007. I filled in on a tour in 2008, and then I was officially a member in 2009. So, it was later in a sense, but it was just still, just the beginnings of the band, like starting to do stuff. But as far as like getting involved, honestly, like, so I played in a few different bands in North Texas, whenever I was growing up, when I was in my early 20s. And I was in a band that so I was in a band that was pretty heavy, but it was like, that it was that emo heavy era, you know what I mean? Like when we were
Yeah.
just talking about the first Bring Me the Horizon album, it was like that. It was like the heavy stuff, but you had a lot of like, talking about your feelings and like kind of like jaded, broken heart, heavy
The
stuff.
eyeliner just ready there.
Yeah, so I was in a band and it was called Because of Her.
Mm.
And then we eventually got tired of that name because we were just like, it's just like too emo-y. Like, so we ended up kind of rewriting some of our music, kind of redefining our sound. And then that band turned into Surrounded by Monsters. And Surrounded by Monsters, we used to play all over Texas. And we knew Steven that would later on start I Wrestled a Bear Once. But at the time, he had a band called Statues Cry Bleeding. And so they were from Louisiana and we were from North Texas. And we would just trade shows all the time. Like they would bring us to, Louisiana, like Shreveport and some of the other towns around there. They would play, and then we'd bring them over to North Texas, so like Dallas, Fort Worth, Wichita Falls, some other stuff. And we just got to know them pretty well. And there was a point in time where they had given up. They're like, "Nah, we're all quitting. We're done." And then that's whenever Steven started dating Krista. And then another member from Statues Cry Bleeding, John, kind of moved in with them as a roommate. So those three lived together. And apparently they were like, we're just gonna start a band. Like, we're tired of sitting on our asses. So they started a band. And I just remember one day, being on MySpace, and they were like, "Here's our new band." And then I remember seeing it and listening to it, and I'm like, who's this dude doing vocals for them? And then I get the text the same night because it was like the day they launched it or whatever. And Steven's like, "Hey, check out our new band. My girlfriend's the vocalist." And I was like, "Oh, she's doing all of it." Like, because at first I was thinking she was doing the singing parts and then someone else was doing the screaming. But, after that, I was like, "Well, man, when are you guys going to start playing?" And eventually, after some time went on, once again, we started trading shows, and they started picking up, really quick with some of the EP songs, started getting them really noticed. And then at that point, their bass player, we did like a summer run of shows, and they said that they had their first national tour, and it was Straight from the Path, American Me. I think there was someone else, but I cannot remember right now. But yeah, and I Wrestled a Bear Once. So that was like the first national tour as an unsigned band that they had. And I remember they were talking about their bass player just got arrested with like 3 grams of marijuana. They were like, "Hey, you should come and fill in for us for the summer." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So pretty much 2008, I did that tour with them. And then, I kept telling them like, "Hey, you guys gotta let me know if you want me in the band, more than this tour." And they just kept being like, "Well, we're gonna see what happens with Brian." And then sure enough, they hit me up and they were like, "Hey, in 3 days we have a tour do you want to be in our band? And I was like, I told you, you have to let me know in advance.
Mhm.
So I declined. And then fast forward a year, Surrounded by Monsters did another run with them. And they were like, so what if we asked you to be in the band again? And I was like, well, now I have, a lot of time to think about it. And they're like, all right. So, they're like I think it was like 2 months. They're like, in 2 months, we do like a Europe tour or something like that. And I was like, well, I don't think I could turn that down. So that's pretty much whenever I became an official member. So
Yeah, and
yeah, I think it was the August Burns Red tour, and then a European tour, and I was just like, it's I can't I don't have to think very hard about that. So I like accepted and went into that. So
yeah, it's quite an interesting story and stuff like that. Whatever. I did actually sort of know and stuff like that you were actually involved before it was like an official member. And you was already in discussions. I thought it was maybe like a thing just sort of later on, as like when I saw and stuff like that the could sort of the bassist left that you ended up replacing, and I thought it was
mhm,
kind of more of you knew them or something like that. So I think it was like you already kind of was in there, kind of, and sort of you were
mhm.
very much doing things sort of musically adjacent to them and all that. It's quite interesting. When you sort of went on that European tour, and obviously with the band, just because I'm a European, so I'm very interested by this and stuff
Mhm.
like that. What sort of countries did you visit across Europe? Did you ever come? I'm guessing you must have come across UK way.
Yes, that was that was the first tour we ever did over there was 2010, and it was the or maybe it was 2009. It was, yeah, I think it was 2009. But it was the Never Say Die tour.
Hmm.
So it was like a pretty big tour, and it spanned all of mainland Europe. But yeah, we did definitely do the UK, like Germany, like I remember it was like France, a lot of mainland Europe stuff. So that was, I mean, at the time, I mean, I've been a few times now and I still love it. I love going overseas and stuff, but that was just such an eye-opening experience back then. So
Oh yeah, and I find it interesting you were saying as well and stuff, going back to talking about MySpace and stuff, because I really wish that I could have been involved in that MySpace era, but being 21 and stuff, I missed out on a lot of that. And it's like,
yeah.
because that was the time and stuff where like that was
Mhm.
where a lot of musical discovery was. Now it's more TikTok and word of mouth, but it was very much you had to be on MySpace, and it was about having a profile and promoting, and then people were sharing it on your bio and stuff. Like, sort of as an artist that was sort of involved in that era and stuff like that, like what was the importance of that kind of getting yourself out there through MySpace and the internet, and what was it like just trying to get people to listen to the band?
Well, at the time, it was crazy to think about because, even whenever I first started playing in a band, we were just playing, as many places in North Texas as we could. We'd play Wichita Falls, we'd play Dallas, we'd play Fort Worth. And then, we started expanding towards like Louisiana and like Oklahoma, and just finding the hot spots that would draw attention. And like pretty much the game plan back then would be play as many places as you can, get your CD out, like try and make an EP, and then you would either burn copies or have physical copies made, which back then was like pretty tough, lots of money, to pump into something just to like hand out, especially when your friends are like, can I get one for free? Can I get one for free? Can I get one for free? But that was the game plan back then. It was to just play places. You're like a word of mouth kind of band, or most of the time, when you're first starting out. But I remember the first time we played this Dallas festival, and like this band of like three girls that were like a metal band were just like, what's y'all's MySpace? And I was like, what is a MySpace? And they're like, oh man, it's a page where you can put your music and then everyone can just look you up online. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So it's just, me and some friends were just talking about this. Like, everyone had their MySpace, and then it had a little player on the page, and you would put your like top songs. I think it was limited at first to so many songs, and you would just upload whatever song you wanted. But whenever you would go to that page and it would load up, it would automatically kick into a song. So that was the thing, is like you were like, we're guaranteed someone's going to hear our song when they click on our page. And then people started getting tricky because they started figuring out how to customize their page and put in code and like decorate their MySpace how they wanted it. And some bands would just rewrite the code and make layers of their song player.
Mm.
So it's like, but then they would mute all the players. So then certain people would like go to your page and it would count for like hundreds of plays every time someone clicked on their page because they had these hidden players in the background counting for every time someone opens your page, like so many times. But yeah, I mean, that was like the beginning of how we see music now. You know what I mean? Because like I said, back in the day, imagine being a band that was just like, we just have to play somewhere we know people are going to go and hand out your CD. And that's like the best you got back in the day.
It's quite interesting as well because you think like we're so used to the internet now and stuff like that, it's like second nature and stuff to us. But it was only like 20 years ago, like sort of like 15 years ago, where some things were still new, like social media and stuff. And, even like downloading music and stuff. When you think about it, it's only really got mainstream like 20 years ago around the time of I was going to say Napster and LimeWire, but that was not the ones I wanted to bring up. Not the ones where people were illegally downloading. Trying to think of the mainstream one, or Apple and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously LimeWire and all that had a big part of it, and Napster and stuff. But like, it's crazy. Like that was literally like 15 years ago, and people were still saying, "What's Facebook?" And now, could you imagine people doing that now? It's like it's such a different time.
Well, I think it's so weird too to think about how all of those things started out so humble. And all of those things started out to help the musician. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, for instance, if we're talking about music specifically, it was like, wow, this is helping musicians. Wow, we could put our music online and people could just listen to it, hear it, and like tell their friends. And then it's evolved because of our capitalism to be like, you could upload your music and people will listen, but you only are going to get teeny tiny fractions of a penny per play as a signed band. So it's just like, it's like started as this thing that's like, we love it, finally, like a way for people to hear an unsigned band. And then the signed bands were like, finally, I will make more money because people know about me. And then it snowballs into like, I get nothing. I have, like some bands are like 700,000 people listen to my band on Spotify and we make nothing. So, and then just the internet in general, like when it first started, it's funny to think about how it was like no ads. People were online, like looking at Facebook or Instagram and being like, I like this and I have nothing to say about any of it. And then now we're just like, I hate everything. I came here specifically to tell you this is dumb. You know what I mean? And so I think everyone is just so used to it that it's just a negative thing now. So
and there's another platform for your mum to have a go at you. She has a go at you online.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
But sort of speaking of like social media and stuff like that, and speaking about sort of like MySpace and stuff like that, obviously, being in a band, you would have had, like loads of fans, whatever, and stuff, especially coming up to sort of meet you and stuff like that, and the other band members and stuff like that. Like, what was it like when the band like really started to sort of, what I mean, like when it reached sort of the point of, sort of past the Taste Like Kevin Bacon times. I know sort of you were kind of involved, kind of wasn't at the time, and then over time it was just popular getting on Warped Tour and stuff like that. What was it like to have all of these fans just sort of going to see like, hey, hey, it's me, what I mean, it's Rickshaw, I can't believe it's meeting you, and like, what was that like having all fans?
I
and
mean,
stuff?
it was it was crazy to think, that it was crazy to think at the time that those are all the things we were working for, and it was like unheard of to even, you know what I mean? You put in all this work because I honestly started playing bass for any band whenever I was like 23 or something like that. And so it was like 5 years later before I even did like a full-blown tour or something like that. But yeah, it's like it's just you just grow so accustomed to like having these goals and these hopes and dreams that are outside of just go to college, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And it was just crazy for us that it was happening, you know, and it was awesome to see fans wanting to hang out, wanting to get stuff signed. And I always tried to stick around, you know, and like sign stuff and talk to fans. I feel like we've reached, you know, and it's just the progression of the internet too. I feel like it's things are different nowadays because back then you had a lot of humble people coming up and just wanting to chill for a minute or buy you a drink. And like now, like I said, internet culture is pretty toxic. So it's like you might not get any bands hanging out that much because people like weirdos might show up. And I
Mm.
mean, there's always been a chance of that. But nowadays it's like pretty prominent, especially if you have a girl in your band or something like that. Get a
Mm.
lot of creepy dudes and like you need, you know, this is and this is I'm just speaking from, you know, go going to see like Courtney and Michael that were in the band, like they're in Spirit Box now. They definitely don't spend much time out in the crowd, and they don't spend
Mm.
time with a lot of fans at the show because they've ran into a lot of problems with like people getting pretty creepy with Courtney and stuff like that.
Mm.
So back then I don't think it was much of a problem compared to how it is now. So we would always hang out with the crowd. We'd always be out there, and it's really even some of my personal friends when I go see them play, I don't see them in the crowd that much. You know what I mean? I'd be lucky to run into them unless I'm literally texting them and telling them where I'm at and stuff like that. So,
It makes me think as well of sort of like the whole sort of K-pop fandom and stuff like that, and the whole situation we see there. Like, I would be so scared if I was in a K-pop band meeting some of those fans. Like
mhm,
when they like know like your parents' middle names and stuff like that. We make jokes about it on the internet, but when we really think about it, these are people that are like, this is my guy and I stan him and stuff like that. I would
mhm,
not trust them anywhere near that guy and stuff like that
right.
at all. And it's even like you even see stuff like, you know what I mean, like when fans will then sort of rush on stage and stuff like that, and they're all trying to sort of hug them and sort of like you said with like female artists and stuff and what they have to deal with and stuff like that with like so many sort of, you know, guys sort of being like creepy and stuff like that, and even sort of girls in some cases and stuff
Mhm,
like that. You know what I mean? You even hear experiences of that on both ends and stuff. And it's just sad to sort of think that it's like they ruin experience like for fans and
mhm.
stuff like that. It's just sad to see it.
Yeah, but that's I feel like, you know what I mean, this whole this whole conversation about the internet is that, you know what I mean? It's like the things that are good for us and the things that we can do, but there's always toxicity that comes with it, you know what I mean? So
Mm.
so it's like you could be a fan and you could pump money into the band and you could be like I'm doing good, but you could also be creepy and you could say things to them personally that are super weird, or go online and try and defend something that someone's saying about your favorite band, and then you end up looking like a psycho, and stuff like that. So it's just there's always a balancing point. It's just I think the internet's just teaching us to be a little more like crude and like no filter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
People will like they're so parasocially attached and
Hmm.
stuff like that to these bands and stuff like that. They wouldn't be like this in public, but when they're online, they're like, oh no, but I defended, but they couldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done that and done this. And it's like, but there's evidence there saying they've done this, or no, why are you defending
Yeah.
them for this? They've said this about
Yeah.
fans and all that. And they're like, no, but it means, and I think that's that parasocial relationship. And I just think being online, being anonymous, it allows people to just sort of do what they want and be like
Hmm.
maybe the self that's inside them, or just basically be a person no one likes.
Yeah, and it's gotten really crazy too with like the amount of people in bands or actors or whatever that are like turn out to be really bad people, but the debates you hear about some of this stuff is just like we all know nothing about what's going on. Like
Mm.
you could talk about some allegations that have happened with a band and hear no real evidence, and the person that's calling him out for it is completely anonymous, and we have so many people already like arguing about what's going on.
Mm.
And it's just like, I don't know, it's so toxic to think. Well, and also it's crazy the amount of people that when they become famous or have a little bit of attention are awful at that point too.
Mm.
So yeah, so it just sucks. But I mean, like, I feel like the people that grew up like my age, that grew up with the internet, we sit around and we like shake our head and try and like learn from our own stuff. Like, me personally, I've caught myself getting into like debates online, and I've literally like erased whole paragraphs and been like, we both have an opinion, and if you if you have your own, you could believe your own, and that's great. We shouldn't be arguing about this, you know what I mean? So I've literally just gotten to those heated moments of like, I just can't feed into this anymore. So
Yeah, you kind of sort of get sort of caught up in the whole kind of adrenaline of sort of,
hmm
debating and opinions and stuff. And I think
hmm
kind of like the internet kind of harbors that in a lot of ways and stuff. So yeah, no, that was obviously an interesting discussion and stuff like that. We went a bit off topic, but I like that though, to
yeah.
be honest, and stuff like
No,
that, because
yeah.
it's important things to talk about though.
Mhm.
So it's important.
Well,
Um,
I also wanted to bring up too that it's so apparent, that have you ever seen Swarm, a show called Swarm?
uh, I haven't, no. I think it rings a bell, but no, I don't think I've seen it.
Okay, so Swarm is a show that Donald Glover wrote. It's on
Oh,
Amazon.
yeah, I do know it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's about a toxic fan, and it's modeled after Beyonce
Mm.
because she has the group of people like the Beehive or something like that. And
Yeah, I think
so
something. Yeah.
so Swarm is supposed to be the same thing. It's like an internet group that like supports this artist that the person in this show likes, and she just loves that artist so much that she ends up murdering people because she loves the artist so much. And it's just like, that's how apparent how toxic our fandom is nowadays, is like
Mm.
there's literally shows being written about it.
And
So
it's crazy because you'd say like, no, that's a dramatization, and it's like I could see that happen if you heard, yeah, a fan of, you know what I mean, like I don't know, some K-pop band, or a fan of like, I don't know, like the 1975 or something like that with one of these pop bands. If you said, yeah, they murdered another fan because they didn't like so and so, you'd go, I'm not surprised. I'm like, you
yeah.
look them on Twitter, look at how they act. So a lot of
hmm
it, you're just not really too surprised about, to be honest. Okay, so now I have to bring this up. You know what I mean? You being sort of a former musician and stuff like that yourself and
hmm
stuff, you cover a lot of sort of music stuff as well and stuff like that on your podcast channel and stuff like that, which we'll
hmm
get into and stuff like that shortly. But we have to speak about the incident happened a few months ago and stuff with one of my favorite bands, and who were my favorite band of all time and stuff, Royal Blood and stuff. There was a famous incident where they basically had a go at the fans and stuff at a massive sort of like concert, like festival and stuff called the Radio One Big Weekender and stuff like that. It was over in not Ireland, sorry, in Scotland and stuff. And there was a lot of pop acts on that show and stuff. It's run by BBC, like the BBC and stuff like that. So it's one of their big shows. It's, you know what I mean? It's a big show, and they got a lot of pop artists and all that there. They also
hmm
invited Royal Blood, and Royal Blood definitely loved the audience there. They showed the love to the audience very much. I definitely recommend, if you guys can, stuff, if you haven't seen the clip we're talking about, go check it out and stuff online and stuff. And we're going to be sharing our reactions. I actually just got and stuff like that, Rickshaw and stuff like that, to go have a look because he hadn't actually seen the clip.
hmm
So, what do you think about the clip that you saw?
uh I mean, it's pretty rude. But it's just like, it's hard for me to figure it out. Not is Were they just mad at the fans because they didn't seem to be that receptive, or were they like trying to make a statement to say screw you to the lineup, and like
Um,
the kind of show it was, you know what I mean?
Well, it was kind of like, from what sort of come out afterwards, whatever, and analyzing the situation, like sort of, so like I heard one person claim that at the show apparently there was like people were kind of like sort of like talking, sort of whatever, not really paying attention, more
hmm
really making it obvious that they just wanted to see the next sort of pop acts coming up, whatever,
hmm
and sort of. But then you watch the clips and the crowd's getting quite into it. You know what I mean? They were and stuff like that, but admittedly, most of them didn't really. get that interested because they didn't know them. They came for Lewis Capaldi, who was like the big like it was in Scotland. Lewis Capaldi's from Scotland. He's the hometown guy. So if you're going to get a bunch of pop fans going up there, who are they going to want to see? You know, Lewis
Hmm.
Capaldi, the main sort
Right.
of guy and stuff. And professionalism wise, you still can't be like that.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
interesting thing though is that the lead singer said, "Oh, but I'm also like that because I like to be a bit like a professional wrestler, and I like to just when I'm on stage, I'm a different person. So I just like to be a bit more that way." Well, how would you
Yeah.
react to that?
I mean, I don't know. You could have a little more sass going on whenever you're on stage and stuff, but when it comes to calling out people for not being into it or something, it just seems like a no-no to me because your perception of what's going on versus what might really be going on is always probably disconnected. Because I know that, like, sure, I've played plenty of shows where like people seem like they're not into it, and like the people at the front might not be moving much, and it's like, and afterwards they're like, yeah, I really liked you, I just loved seeing y'all play, you're a lot of fun to watch. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm even playing, I play in a new band now. But my brother and my nephew came out, and I remember my guitarist being like, man, it's just the people that were standing in front of me just seemed so bored, and they seemed like they hated it. And I was like, no, that was my brother and my nephew, and they said they loved it. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah,
like there's times where it's like, if you really want to get butthurt about playing in front of that many people and there's people not paying attention, you know what I mean? It's like you're getting a little too comfortable with what you're doing, because like I'm sure there's a lot of people that were like, never heard this band, but I'm definitely into it now.
yeah.
And then whenever he acted like that, it was like, oh, never mind, you know what I mean? So it's just like, you gotta, if you're not feeling the vibes, you still can't act like a baby about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're there to do a professional job. You're getting paid. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You know, it can be annoying and you can go backstage and go, those were doing this. Nobody was getting
Hmm.
involved. And you'd be like, yeah, but that's behind the scenes. When you're on stage going, what does that say about you? We're having to clap him because no one's listening. It's
Yeah.
like, come on, dude. Like flipping off the fans. It's like you are on. You
Hmm.
know, that by the way, that was broadcast and stuff like that by sort of the BBC and stuff like that. So that was on like actual broadcasts and stuff like that. It's like it wasn't just you at a private venue. This is something that was going out to millions. That's why the news
Hmm.
channel caught it, because it was on basically like a live feed or something like that. It's you've got to be
Hmm.
professional in those situations, ain't you?
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, there are just people known for kind of acting like that. You know what I mean? And whenever you're to the level, I would say, coming from metal and coming from metalcore and all that stuff, if you're playing a show that big, I'm sure you're set for a while with your music career. You know what I mean? As to where like someone in the metalcore scene might say something like that and like be washed from the face of metalcore afterwards. So it's
Mm.
just like, it's like he just seems spoiled, and he seems like he's just being a because like he wasn't feeling it that day or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this too. It's like I personally, I hate when artists act like this. We were
yeah,
talking about Aaron Lewis.
yeah.
That's the
That's what it made
guy.
me think of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The guy from Stained, who does a country act, and he does an unplugged song at the end of his set. Keep in mind, some of these places he plays are like, 500 plus cap rooms, and he unplugs his already acoustic guitar and then yells at his fans if they're talking. And it's the type of thing where it's just like, you're a musician, people are going to be talking, dude. Like, it's a bar. They're probably talking about what a good time they're having because
Mm.
they've been at work all week hating their lives. And then instead, we have Aaron Lewis shushing them and telling them that they're awful fans. And it's like, they don't deserve that. They're just enjoying themselves. They paid the ticket price. Give them a break. Don't
Mm.
yell at them. You know what I mean? So,
It's like performing in front of like a sports crowd and so like that might not know you, and then sort
Mhm.
of going like, sort of, why isn't anyone quiet here? And it's like you're at a sports game, they've been drinking all day. Like, what do you
Mhm.
expect? Of course, they're not
Yeah.
gonna be the most quiet, like shushing a choir, like
Yeah.
like you were saying about that guy when he was going off at the fans and stuff like that. The guy from sort of Stained, whatever, and
Mhm.
stuff. And the thing I find interesting and stuff like that as well is like, sort of, if they didn't like you, dude, they wouldn't have paid to go see you.
Mhm.
If you was if it was like a gig where you were the opening act and people were going off the stage, when's thingy coming out, you'd be like, fair enough. They paid us
Yeah.
something a bit. You just go along with
Yeah.
it, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not the
Like
opera, you know what I mean?
you're the main act. You're the reason they're there. Let's not swear at them at that point. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Oh,
It's crazy the world we live in. So
oh yeah, 100% and stuff. But it's really interesting to hear your insight on that clip because that was one earlier this year that, like I said, is my favorite band of all time. It really got to me. So it was interesting to see, I'm sort of a musician and stuff like that, sort of your sort of point of view and stuff on that whole situation. And just sort of wrap up and stuff like that, talking about music, whatever, and stuff. Unfortunately, and stuff like that, IWABO and stuff ended up coming to an end and stuff.
mhm.
Sort of had like, sort of, what moment did you know that like the band was kind of sort of over and stuff like that? Because I feel like it's one of those things, when I tried to research, it wasn't like there was a distinct end. It was kind of a bit more phased out kind of over time.
So I have talked about this before, and I've made amends with some of the people in the band that became the reason that we broke up, but it's mostly the fact that like Steven, the guitarist, was the main guy in the band. He was the original member. He started most of the accounts. He held all the passwords. And there was a point in time whenever Hail Mary came out, and that was when Courtney and Michael were in the band. And we played as a four-piece that the final tours, because Steven started doing work with Diplo. He started stage managing for Diplo. And so he was like, well, you guys can go on and tour without me, but I'm going to be working and I can't really turn down the money he was getting offered to do these crazy Diplo shows. You know what I mean? So eventually it became like a thing where we were touring, we were out there on the road, and we in our final days we were choosing to try and utilize the money we were making the most we could. So there was times where we would reward ourselves with like one hotel a week, and then like stay with friends, stay with family, sleep in the van, and just so we could still have money for ourselves after the tour was over. And it just seemed like towards the end we were just like reporting to Steven, and Steven would be like, well, you need to pay this bill and you need to pay that bill, and it would just be like, and it came to a point where we were like, well, send us all the invoices and we'll take care of it. And he'll be like, well, you don't trust me, like you shouldn't need invoices and all this stuff. And we're like, well, we're out here sleeping in the van,
Mm.
playing the summer tours, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So we were just like, dude, it just seems like you're an angry boss yelling at us all the time for this stuff. And eventually we kind of like had a talk that was like, you're acting like you want out of the band. Do you want out of the band? We would be happy to take over all the debt and all that stuff, and as long as we continued apart. And he was just kind of like, no, you can't kick me out of my own band, and locked us out of everything. And then eventually we were just like, well, the only resolution we could think of is all four of us want to quit your band, because we're just tired of being gaslighted all the time, and tired of not having a trust that's happening there. Because it's just the type of thing where like I known Steven for a long time, and he's a really good friend, and I've made up with him after the fact. But he is the type of person that wants it done his way. And any other time, like, it's the type of thing where like he would look to me and he would want me to back him up. And he would, so if he had an idea for like, a shirt or a song or whatever, he would look to me and say like, what do you think? And I would back him up a lot because most of the time he would lead us to victory.
Mm.
But whenever the band started declining, there was a lot of things where we talked about maybe we should try something new, maybe we should go a different direction. And he would be like, back me up on this, back me up on that. And I'd be like, I don't know, man. I'm kind of thinking we should try that new direction. You know what I mean? So, and he would get mad about it. So it's just eventually it just wasn't working the same. And like I said, like he's the type of guy that like if you came up with a part that you wanted to use in a song, he'd say, nah, I don't think it really fits. But if you waited a while and if you brought that same part up to him and you said, hey, remember that part that you thought of that you brought to my attention, and then we would look it up on the computer, he would be like, oh man, that is pretty cool, like maybe we should use that. And it would be like that's how you had to communicate with him sometimes. Like you literally had to make him think that it was his idea before he would use your idea. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
sometimes. So eventually we just found it to be the best thing to just to part ways, because we knew that if we did try and compromise anymore, it just would still be his way at the end of the day. And that's kind of why it fizzled towards the end, because whenever the statement, there was a statement being worked on that was gonna tell everybody that we were parting ways, and he was the one that was writing it, and he was the one making the context, you know what I mean? Like, so there was a few times where he's like, I'm gonna post this, is this okay? And like Courtney and Michael would be like, why would we say okay to that? Like you're not telling what's actually happening. You're telling it the way that you would protect your own self. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you don't want the fans to be mad at you, and we are literally all quitting because of the things that you are doing. So that's kind of why there was never a statement about it. And then that's why it fizzled out. So
It is that kind of hard thing because it's kind of like, you know what I mean? You can sort of understand like to an extent and stuff, it's his band and stuff like that. So he's
mhm,
going to be a bit more sort of, the manager of it in a way. But at the same time, you've kind of got to do the actions that are best for the whole group. At the end of the day, you are all
mhm,
the band and stuff like that. Like you kind of got to realize, okay, yes, it's my band, I started this, but we're all I Wrestle the Bear Once, we're all IWABO, this is our band and stuff. And
mhm,
sometimes people kind of get a bit lost in the creativity and the whole kind of thing of it was me or you've done this and all that. And that was one thing sort of I noticed was sort of like doing my research is that there was no definitive statement or definitive thing saying, what I
mhm,
mean, it's come to an end and stuff like that. And it was interesting to hear that a statement and stuff like that was a work in the work a couple of times, but obviously, what I mean, because it was written by him and all that and all the context around it, it kind of then didn't end up coming into fruition. Do you
mhm.
think there's any chance that there ever would be a reunion of the band, or was it kind of something that's going to be kind of left in the past? Because I know obviously you're still, I believe, still good friends with like Krista, for instance, and stuff. Obviously, I know Courtney's doing her own things like with her sort of partner and stuff with Spirit Box. But you think there
Mhm.
might be anything reunion wise, anything in that realm?
I just really, so like a part of me would like that to happen. And, obviously that was like a big part of my life that I think is great. You know what I mean? I mean, like in a sense,
Mm.
if you're comparing it to like, people that go to school and get degrees and all this stuff, it's like that was my life's work. You know what I mean? Like just to be a part of that. But so obviously I would like for that to happen, but I think that there's just too much damage done that like people don't want to work, because let's just say there was an offer for any of us, to get back together to play a show. That offer would go to Steven,
Mm.
and Steven would be the person in charge of the money for that. And he would be in charge of, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just, if that was part of the reason for the breakup, then I don't see it like I don't see
Yeah.
that same reason bringing us back together. You know what I mean? Because we're already like, that's why though. So
It's like leaving a burning building, and instead of trying to put it out, it's like going back into the burning building. It's like, well, it's not going to change. It's still
yeah,
on fire.
yeah.
Like you said, though, it's sometimes and stuff like that. It's more than the music. It's the context around it. It's the people involved, and that's why you
Mhm,
don't see reunions. Obviously, we know many famous bands that haven't reunited and stuff, and sometimes it is that sort of out of context and stuff. But
mhm.
I'm guessing, though, obviously and stuff, it's still something you look fondly on your time, though, in the band.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fun to I mean, so I am playing in a new band, but it's so
Yeah, sorry,
funny.
I never brought that up that much. I
Yeah, yeah.
apologize. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can.
I mean, we'll get to that. But it's the type of thing where like so many people in the music scene are like, my old band used to do this, my old band used to do that. Oh, so and so said this, jokes from the old band. And one of my bass player now is like, we don't talk about our old bands, quit talking about our old bands. And it's like, it's the type of thing where like so many people want to talk about their old bands, but there is somewhat of a thing where it's like, we still should move forward, you know what I mean? It's like, but there's nothing wrong with reminiscing, because it's like there's times where I meet people and they become close friends, and then they literally have no idea, and they're like, hey, what's up with the guy, like I work at a bar, and there's still to this day times where someone at the bar is like, do I know you? And I'm like, I don't think so. And like, did you used to play in a band? I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, was it I wrestled a bear once? And then they like freak out. So then there's times on top of that where like my friends, that my coworkers that are friends with me are like, so what's the name of your old band? Because I really had no idea like what it's about. And then I'm like, all right, let's look up some videos, and then they're like, oh my God, this is crazy, and then, like, especially when you're just like working at a local bar, like brewery or whatever, and they're like, wait, one of your music videos has like 1.8 million views. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, like, how are you here? And I'm like, well,
Life doesn't
1.8,
work out
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then I'm like, 1.8 million views, and whatever might have come of that went into someone else's pocket. It went into someone else's clout. You know what I mean? Like, I was just the guy, dancing around in the videos. So,
You see that with so many things, like people just think because you're sort of, a musician, you're going on tour with all these bands and going on these big international things, they go, you must be minted and stuff like that. But the finances aren't, unless you're at the top, the
mhm,
finances just aren't like that and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like I like you were saying, I bet you so many people sort of come up to you, be like, you must have so much money once they find out you're part of that
mhm,
band and stuff. It must be like,
yeah,
it's not really how it works.
yeah. And it's like people, the way they view it. I mean, I found myself doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I went to a Poppy show, the other day, Poppy in Paris, and I sat there and was like, wait a minute, there's like way less people here than I thought there would be, because I see Poppy videos and I see Poppy promos, and I think that she's like one of the biggest stars in this genre or whatever. So, and now that I see how, like, not even empty, but like not packed it was,
Mm,
I'm like, oh, maybe it's still, it's that same thing people thought about me.
mm,
Because like even when Krista quit the band, she was like, I'm pregnant. I just can't tour in a van during the summer and like all this stuff. And I remember there was comments all throughout that post that was just like, I know for a fact that they all own their own houses, so why can't they like get a bus? And then someone's like, I swear that they had like 5 buses they toured in, like,
mm,
so why can't she tour while she's pregnant? It's like, these are crazy thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, let alone like thinking about owning 5 buses is wild. Like, I don't even think Slipknot owns their own buses. I could be wrong, but like, it would blow my mind if they did. and
Mhm.
they're one of the biggest bands we have in the metal scene. You know what I mean? So, and it's just, and then and then owning your own house as a grown up nowadays is realistic. But for every person in the band to own a house from the music they made is definitely not realistic. You know what I mean? So it's just wild to think about how someone looks at a band and sees them play a show on stage and they're like, they have to be loaded, and it's like that is maybe in the 80s and 90s that was true, but not anymore.
It's quite funny because it makes me think of, I feel like we have that opinion stuff over here and stuff, mostly about like sports stars and stuff, especially footballers, like soccer players and stuff, for like, you know what I mean, non sort of European listeners and stuff. Like people and stuff think that like after they retire, they're like, oh, they're gonna sit there with all their money in a big
Mhm,
mansion. And most of the time, unless they go reinvest that money or they go do things like punditry and stuff like that, commentary, or even like, being a content creator, like unless they keep that revenue stream going, yeah, they might have earned loads of money as a sports star, had night deals and everything.
mhm,
That money does dry up eventually unless you're smart with it. And we see so
mhm,
many of them and stuff go, yeah, I'm now working at a restaurant and I played for one of the biggest football teams for 5 years. And people are like, what? And it's like, because that's kind of the reality of life sometimes. It's,
mhm,
you know what I mean? People go down sort of different paths, and sometimes you've just got to be mega smart with money. And sometimes, yeah, you might be earning quite a bit of money on paper, but you don't know the full details of that contract. That's split up all different ways. And if they had a family to provide for and other things go wrong, that money goes down very quickly. And I think
mhm,
some people just they have an idea of what musicians or footballers and stuff like that are earning, and it just isn't sort of like realistic and stuff.
mhm.
But sort of to move on and stuff a bit, sort of from like IWABO and stuff like that, we spoke sort of all about it. Your new band, we got to speak about it. I didn't say about it, and I feel bad and stuff. Sort of what's
No,
your
it's all good.
what's your
Uh,
band and stuff like that you're now a part of, and sort of where can people go find it?
so I'm playing in a band called Never Rest. It is an Austin-based band, Austin, Texas. And I am doing vocals for the band. And so it's like a metalcore, hardcore band.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, so there was a point in time where I was kind of just like me and someone that was in Surrounded by Monsters. We just decided during the pandemic, obviously, because everyone was just like, I'm gonna do a project that I've always wanted to do, during the pandemic. And before I ever played bass and before I ever joined I Wrestled a Bear Once, I did want to do vocals. And uh just through circumstances, I ended up with a bass, and that's just what stuck at the time, all the way through me having a bass career in IWABO. But during the pandemic, my buddy that I went to high school with, and he knew me originally as someone who wanted to do vocals. I was like, let's just do our own EP. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And so he just started writing a bunch of riffs and sending them to me, and then I would compose it, and then I would like uh put digital drums on it, and then I would put vocals on it.
Hmm.
And eventually we had a 5-song EP, and you could listen to that on Spotify if you're looking for something like super, like super 2007 vibes, some of that weird stuff, like kind of like iWabo. But that is called Phantom Figures, Phantom Figures. That's on Spotify. And then when I moved to Austin, that was just kind of a project. We were like, if people want us to play it live, eventually maybe we'll play it live. And then fast forward to this year, and one of my buddies that I know from going to shows was like, hey, who all do I know that does vocals? And I was like, well, I mean, I don't have the time for it, but I do vocals. And he's like, all right, well, you should come jam sometime. And I was like, yeah, I could probably come jam, but I don't have the time to do anything past that. And he's like, all right, come jam. So I went and jammed, and they were like, so do you want to be in the band or what? And I was like, yes. so so
I
yeah,
find it
so
funny. There's been so many times where it's like you've been asked, and you're so like most people will be like, "Yeah, I want to be part of the band," and you're like, we need.
yeah,
You know what? Also, you say you're a vocalist. Why did we never hear you do like? Why was you never the lead vocalist in IWABO? That's what we should have had. You should have been member.
well, whenever you put out an EP at the height of the internet, and your lead vocals is a female,
Mm,
then after that, everyone's gonna want a female vocalist for your band. So I think that if there was even a point in time where we figured Krista was gonna be out the door, and we knew Thomas Eric from Fall of Troy, and he was like, "I'll do vocals for you. I don't even care. I'll do them this week. I'll take over now. I'll write." And we were just like, "I don't think that's gonna work." And then we were also like, as much as we love you, Thomas, you're just as sporadic and wish-washy as Krista. And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna be mad at that, but but yeah." So that's why I don't know. I would do backing vocals and stuff at our live shows, so like I said, it was like always a dream of mine. So yeah, that's why I was like, I don't have time for this. I'll go try out, but I definitely don't have the time. And then when they asked, I was like, yes, I will clear out the time.
So are you guys and stuff doing sort of shows and stuff in your sort of area and stuff like that? Is that what you're like doing now?
Yes. So I mean, I've only been in the band for like a month and a half, but we played a few Austin shows. We played like in Fort Worth. We have shows lined up, in other places in Texas, like Abilene, San Marcos, Houston, Denton. We're just, I guess I was fortunate enough to join the band when they had already started getting established. I wouldn't say that it's like completely from the ground up. They've been a band, I believe, since the pandemic.
Mm.
They also started their band during the pandemic. But yeah, we they had an EP out, and then a few singles on top of that. So they are just now getting a lot of offers for a lot of stuff in the Austin area. Like we played the Johnny Booth Earth Groans tour, open for that. We're in November, we're like opening the Protest the Hero, Callous Cowboy show, just like trying to get in front of as many people as we can for being a newer band. So
Oh yeah, and stuff, and it must be sort of quite nice in a way and stuff like that to sort of go back to sort of performing in those more smaller venues because there's a certain level of sort of like it's very intimate kind of experience. That level of sort of you can really see all the heads in the room and stuff like that. It must be nice to go from obviously what you had and stuff like that. I mean, performing at these big venues and sort of whatever and stuff to now be sort of opening for acts and that have that sort of different experience. It must be quite nice and stuff in a way to go back to that.
it is nice to, like, I don't know, it's nice to go back to basics. I feel like no matter what you're doing, like, as whether it's your dream or if it's a job that you're like kind of into, maybe even not into, it's always fun to just go back to the roots of what that is and just kind of like stop worrying about someone and just rip some songs, you know what I mean? So that's mainly what I've been concerned with, is like just doing my job the best I can, because it's just crazy to think that like they're like, yeah, start practicing. Yeah, we have a show next month. And I was like, guys, you have to remember, I've never done vocals as for like a whole set as the front man. I've done backing vocals, sure. And they're like, you'll be fine. It'll be great. And then like first show, I'm like, voice is gone for like, the whole week afterwards. I'm like, I need to learn how to do this better. And then the second show I play, my voice is gone for like 2 days. I'm like, oh, it's getting better. And then the shows I've played after that, it's like after I'm done playing, I'm like, oh, like yeah, I must be getting used to this. So it's like I can talk now. So I don't know. It's it's fun. It's a lot of fun, honestly. So that's, if I didn't think it was going to be fun, I wouldn't want to do it. But at the same time, with what you're saying, I do want to see us playing bigger venues eventually,
Yeah.
just because you know, there's nothing better than crowd control.
Mm.
You're like, hey, everyone, I want to see everyone jumping. And whenever you're like that opening band on a lot of shows, like you're like, let's get everybody jumping, and everyone's like, nah, it's not time yet. And so that's the part where I'm just like, yeah, let's get a little bigger, guys, so I could get these freaking people jumping.
It'd be really funny as well if they were all standing there, all just cross-armed like that. You see a
Yeah,
crowd of
yeah,
people, like
yeah,
just like that,
yeah,
like they're all like soldiers or something, like sort of like very like we are not
yeah,
impressed right now. We
yeah.
are we are waiting for who we're here to see. Oh,
Exactly. I'm gonna have to go royal blood on these guys.
what does that say about you?
No,
Oh,
all respect here. When you're the opening band, it's not gonna you're not gonna get all the energy you want. So,
mm.
I'm always gonna just be like very optimistic about that. So,
We got to talk about your podcast, Nerding Out with
mhm.
Rickshaw and stuff like that. Sort of what do you sort of do on the show? I know it's kind of implied in the title, but what's all that about your podcast?
So Nerding Out with Rickshaw is just like me and a few of my friends, and mainly we react to new music, or sometimes it's music in our wheelhouse. We've all been in bands. The people on the podcast that go on with me have all been in bands or are in bands right now, or one of the guys was booking a lot of bands at one point in time and had his own little promotional company. So we come from the era of like heavy music and like all that metalcore, and lots of us were around for the weird era, the Horse the Band era, the heavy Lolo, like. And so obviously we're all grown up now, so it's like you get to hear us coming from that era, and then hear all the different people on the podcast, how we've evolved and how we talk to each other about it too. So it's like the people on the podcast, and what a lot of people don't understand is like we're very cynical and we're very close. So we are like, we talk so much smack to each other, and people in the comments do get really confused because they're like, why are you guys so mean? Why are you talking all this disrespectful stuff about my favorite band? And I'm like, I talk this way about my personal favorite bands. I talk this way about my own bands, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's very cynical, but we just are trying to have fun. And then we also do, every now and then we do a live show on YouTube, and we just, do a roundtable, talk about music, talk about, we used to do a lot more actual nerdy stuff, but some of the guys don't have time to keep up with like nerdy movies and nerdy shows and stuff. So whenever we call it Nerding Out, it's mainly just us geeking over music, but we still do talk about like actual nerdy stuff every now and then too. But yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it. We do long podcasts where we just riff and talk about fun stuff and laugh. Like we talked about all of our nicknames. We all have nicknames that have been cooked up over the years, and we talked about how we got them, and like all of the people in the music scene that also have nicknames. And that's just one of the things that we've talked about. And it's weird how just the nicknames topic we ended up talking for like an hour about. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you guys and stuff like that, you know what I mean, if you haven't already sort of seen it and stuff like that, go check out and stuff his podcasts and stuff. It's miles better than sort of whatever rubbish I'm doing here and stuff like that. I'm only joking and stuff. My podcast is much
No,
better. But anyway.
no, you're doing a great job, because I know that you probably take notes, and you probably have specific questions as to where every time I do an interview, I forget that. And I literally, we just did an interview with Kevin from Electric Callboy,
Mm.
and I realized as we hit record that I specifically had no questions. And I was just like, all right, here we go, and so yeah, but I forgot to say that we do interviews with a lot of bands too. So I try my hardest to make it just like us being homies, us talking about stuff, something a little different than normal interviews, because I hate people that are in bands hate the normal interview questions. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I try to make it a little more personable and a little more fun. So
Yeah, so like I said, some of you guys and stuff haven't checked out already, definitely go check out the channel and stuff, and go check out, you know what I mean, these music interviews as well. If you like what I do over here with the interviews, definitely go check and stuff his stuff out. Okay, and now for the final question, stuff, the question I always like to ask with every podcast and stuff like that episode I do and stuff. If you was to give one piece of advice, someone the most important piece of advice you could give, let's say, there we go, it's for me, for instance, what would that piece of advice be?
Just any advice at all?
Yeah, just whatever you feel, whatever like comes naturally to you. What would advice would you give to me, for instance?
Um, I guess the any advice I would give you or anyone is to just not to be a, you know. I feel like doing what makes you happy, it is the key to living a successful life. Whether, like for me, playing music, I used to think of it as like you haven't, like you're not successful until you are playing at a certain level. But I later found out that like playing at all and being happy doing it is its own success in its own. Because I had someone tell me when I told them I was playing in a new band, they were like, well, it's about time that you're playing again. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, you seem like you're a awfully miserable person when you're just not going out there and playing and doing what you like doing.
Mm.
And it made me realize that, like, whether you're doing something to try and make money or not, like the doing it part is what's going to make you internally be happy. So
Yeah, and that's, you know what I mean, that's very sort of important and stuff like that, to just, sort of, just success and stuff like that, you can sort of measure it and stuff like that in your own way. It's what matters to you personally. It's not just about numbers and figures. We spoke a lot about, your very successful band and stuff like that, whatever, but it's about those little moments and stuff like
Right.
that, and just being on stage that's what really matters and stuff. But anyway and stuff, that's the end of another fantastic, fantastic episode. I've got to be honest, guys, and stuff. I'm feeling it a little. I've had an energy drink and it's really late at night. I am feeling it right now. You probably tell in this episode and stuff. It's going through me. That's my version of vodka. I can legally drink. I've been able to for 3 years, and yet that still hits me more. But anyway, so stuff. How can they find? We've already sort of shouted out your stuff, but say it again, stuff. Where can people find you and stuff? Your band and stuff like that. Your podcast. Where can people find you?
So if you're looking for the music that I'm doing now, we are on Spotify. I mean, that's our main thing. I'm sure you can find it anywhere, like on YouTube and other stuff. But Never Rest is the band. We're an Austin, Texas based band. I am not on anything right now because I just jumped into the band and started playing shows. If you're from the Austin area, just look for Never Rest. We play at least once or twice in Austin every month so far. I will be on some stuff. We're going to be recording some stuff now and through the rest of the year. Hopefully, we're going to start popping out some singles starting in January. So, yeah, look out for that. Also, Nerding Out with Rickshaw is our podcast, me and some of my friends. You could find that on YouTube. You could find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and stuff like that. My Instagram is I Hate Ghosts. So go add me up on there. But yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks. And anyone who adds up my band or my podcast, thank you for helping me out.
Yeah, and stuff. Go, like I said, go check out Cool Things. I'm doing whatever here. Go check out some cool things over there. Now we're all, what I mean, we're all just doing our own thing and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I'm very happy with the show, having great guests like yourself and another fantastic episode and stuff like that all wrapped up. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. See you guys next time. Peace out.